Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star's daily sports podcast. It is Wednesday, March 24th, and I'm Blair Kerkhoff. We talk Chiefs today and the latest roster developments with beat writers Herbie, Teope, and Sam McDowell. Players like Daniel Sorensen, Nick Kaiser, Taco Charlton, and Mike Remmers are back with the Chiefs, and so is Blake Bell, who was with the Chiefs during their Super Bowl victory season, but spent last year in Dallas. But there's plenty of work remaining in free agency, and we discuss the latest possibilities at positions like left tackle, wide receiver, and edge rusher. So let's get started talking Chiefs with Herbie and Sam. All right, we're in week 2 of free agency. I think that's right, and it was a kind of a fast start for the Chiefs with the signings of Thuney and Long on the offensive line. It's kind of slowed down a little bit. Let's play some catch up here with Herbie, Teope, and Sam McDowell. What has happened in the last couple of days with signings, Herbie, and then we'll start speculating on what might happen in the next few days, or at least in the next couple of weeks.
Hey, you can't beat that, when you use the word speculate, because we are in speculation season.
Yep. Yes, we are.
It's rather slow right now, which is kind of odd for free agency. Usually you see a lot of moves, not just around the league, but, just from talking to a lot of folks I know around the league, and even they're saying it does seem kind of slow. The Chiefs right now are sitting on $21 million in cap space. And typically you're going to need between $5 to $7 million for the draft. So that leaves them with $14 million to spend. What we do know since last week, reports are starting to filter out there. They were heavily in the Trent Williams sweepstakes, losing out in the last minute. They were in the sweepstakes for wide receiver JuJu Smith-Schuster, but they lost out on that. Schuster decided to go back to Pittsburgh. But since we talked from the Thuney signing and the Long signing, they did bring back Blake Bell, a tight end, and then they started taking care of their own. They brought back left tackle, or I should say tackle, Mike Remmers. They brought back safety Daniel Sorensen, and then they also took care of a lot of the restricted free agents / rights free agents. But other than that, it's been pretty slow, and it's kind of odd when you think about it. Think of all their free agent players they have right now. None of them have signed with another team. The only one who looks like he could be on track to be the first Chiefs unrestricted free agent to sign elsewhere is Sammy Watkins, who's on a free agent tour right now. He visited the Baltimore Ravens. He's in Indianapolis today. So someone might make him an offer, but as of right now, it's kind of slow on the Western Front.
Okay, well let's take a look at some of those who have who signed up who back with the Chiefs. I was struck by first of all with Dan Sorensen, 31. He's had a nice career in Kansas City. To be honest with you, I didn't know who else might be interested in Dan Sorensen. I just think the Chiefs, that's the best place for him to be. And look, he's gotten a lot. He's been a productive player in Kansas City. I'm not sure how productive he would be elsewhere. He was second on the team in defensive snaps last season, next to Tyrann Mathieu. Sam, was that a good move to bring back Daniel Sorensen?
Yeah, going into the offseason, I thought that was one of the moves this team had to make. That was a guy they had to have back. He's a guy that he plays a position that I think allows the rest of their secondary and linebackers to fall into their most natural place. So that's why I think he does more than probably a lot of people realize. I think more than even, I love Pro Football Focus. I think he does probably more than what he gets graded for there, because he plays sort of a rover position between the linebackers and safeties that can be difficult to assess his assignment, and therefore I think difficult to grade his play. But he's a valuable guy, and he comes up with big plays, it seems like, at the absolute biggest moments of the game. We could sit here and list interceptions he's had to end the game. We know the play he had against Cleveland, and regardless of whether or not it was helmet-to-helmet contact, and it was, I do feel like that play is sort of indicative of Dan Sorensen not giving up on a play. So I just think he's an attitude trendsetter for that defense. And like you said, Blair, I mean, he's probably a guy that fits here better than he does anywhere else, which explains why he signed for a little bit of a discount. 1 year, $2.5 million, like you mentioned, 31 years old is probably the last chance he's going to have to get a multi-year deal if he wanted one. So I think the Chiefs got a good deal with only getting him for 1 year here.
Yeah, and that 1 year contract is fully guaranteed, whereas you see some contracts being signed $2 million, X amount guaranteed. That $2.46 million contract is fully guaranteed. And to Sam's point, he's absolutely correct. I don't think he gets a lot of credit and a lot of love from Chiefs fans because all they remember is him being on the wrong end of a big play. But he's clutch. You could make an argument the Chiefs do not go to the Super Bowl in the past 2 seasons if not for his play in the postseason. Don't forget Houston. His play when he sniffed out that fake punt, that actually propelled the Chiefs towards their comeback. And then Sam brings up the play at the end zone for the touchback. The Browns were going in for a score there and all the momentum on their side. And Sorensen comes up with the momentum change.
I remember the interception he had in Mexico City off of Phil Rivers, right, to end that game against the Chargers a couple of years ago. So, no, I think it's a good signing. And again, I think he just brings more value to the Chiefs than he would starting, anew in another franchise. So,
I wish we had Vahe on to explain how him and I were watching that play in Mexico City, because that was when we were trying to get down to the press box or the press conferences, Blair, and we were so confused about the system afterwards that Vahe was literally carrying his computer and typing with one hand, carrying it with the other, trying to file a story, and we couldn't even find a TV to watch the last 4 minutes of the game until that play was the very first one we saw. We hear the crowd going nuts so often that we're like, what's going on? Are the Chargers coming back? Did we just miss the most important part of the game? We get to a TV and finally see that play. We're like, oh, okay, we got it.
Hey, let's talk about tight end. Going into the offseason, I wasn't sure what the Chiefs were looking to do there, but they really have shuffled the deck, haven't they, at tight end after Travis Kelce, losing Deion Yelder and Ricky Seals-Jones, and signing Nick Keiser, and then bringing back Blake Bell. So are the Chiefs set there, Herbie, at tight end, or are they still shopping for that position?
Personally, I think they might be set. And here's the reason why. When Blake Bell was with the Chiefs in 2019, they were among the league leaders in 12 personnel packages, i.e. the 2 tight end set. You don't necessarily need, in Reed's scheme of the way he deploys his tight ends, you don't necessarily need another high-profile receiving type tight end. You need the guy who can be an inline blocker, which is Bell's strength. Sam mentions PFF, and if I'm not mistaken, they had Blake Bell in his lone year with the Cowboys last year as one of the top blocking tight ends, and that's the piece that was missing last year. Nick Keiser filled that role, but I don't think they were 100% comfortable enough with him in that role last year, clearly by bringing back Blake Bell, because that's the role that he thrives in, that complementary tight end as the blocker to Kelce's receiving skills.
Yeah, I think, Blair, that they wanted to improve in that position in the offseason. I think they feel like Blake Bell does that. It probably bumps Nick Keiser down to the tight end 3, and Blake Bell's going to play more of those snaps. And, they feel like Kaiser's better than Yelder. So their tight end 2 and their tight end 3 are now better than what they were in 2020.
Bell caught a touchdown pass against the Texans, I think, in the playoffs a couple of years ago.
Yeah. The only one of his career.
He's happy. The Wichita native is happy to be back in the Midwest.
Yes, he is. Yeah. So I want to go back to something Sam said, and I agree with this, that Pro Football Focus, when they hand out their grades, I saw what they assigned to Dan Sorensen and basically made him a below average safety. I disagree with that, and I think that just shows a sort of a lack of understanding of what he means to the Chiefs. But I suppose I'm taking this moment to praise Pro Football Focus because I think they do a heck of a job. And they do the work that nobody else does, and you just can't expect them to understand every little nuance for every player on every team. I kind of feel like it's the way I feel about Pro Football Focus the way I do about recruiting rankings. Sometimes you only talk about them when they assign one star to somebody who ends up being a college standout or something.
Yeah.
But they're the ones that do all the dirty work and put all the time and effort in. So we often the reason we refer often to Pro Football Focus, I think, is bottom line is we respect the work that they do.
Yeah, we all use them.
Yep.
And their stat keeping is incredible as well. It's not just the grades. I mean, they do so much in-depth stat keeping that we all use them.
Absolutely.
Might be the anomaly because I don't use them that much. And it goes back to your one point you just made there, Blair. I think Vikings head coach Mike Zimmer made the best point when he said, when you look at these grades, you have to understand what a player's assignment is. If you don't know what a guard is doing when he's pulling, you can't say he missed a block. If a linebacker is chasing the player down the field, you can't say he missed the tackle if that guy wasn't his primary responsibility. PFF does a phenomenal job, like you said, of watching every play. But if I'm watching every play and I don't understand what the play call was, I cannot realistically assign a grade. And that's the biggest knock on them. When you talk to players around the league and you hear head coaches talk about them, that's where you run into the issue. I don't get so much into the grading scale, but I will go into their stats.
Well, one player over the years whose I think esteem rose because of Pro Football Focus scouting was Mitchell Schwartz. I mean, here's a guy who, he was noted for just never missing a snap in Cleveland in his first few years in Kansas City, but it's always difficult to grade for us to know what's going on in the offensive line without the intense film study. But he annually was graded among the higher, right tackles in the game. And I think his, maybe his stature rose because of analytics like Pro Football Focus. And I'm sure there are several other players like that. So just wanted to put that out there. Let's switch to needs here and what's left for the Chiefs in terms of needs. Let's start with this. Visiting. Who is coming in? Who do we know is coming into Kansas City this week, and who has been in Kansas City, Herbie? We're recording this on Wednesday morning, so by the time it gets posted, there could be more. We could find out more about visits and who might be planning a visit. But who has been to Kansas City this week, or who do we know is planning to come to Kansas City?
Melvin Ingram. That's all we need to know.
Yeah, it's a big one. He's a big one.
Yeah, former defensive end from the Chargers. When he's healthy, he's a game changer. Unfortunately, he's been hurt over the past 2 seasons. But if they're looking to use him as in a rotational role with Taco Charlton opposite Frank Clark, I think it would be a phenomenal signing to get Melvin Ingram in here, because as of right now, the Chiefs have 2 defensive ends / pass rushers who are currently unrestricted free agents, and Alex Okafor and Tano Passanio. And when you look at Ingram's body of work, he's an upgrade. So I think if you're looking for that rotational player, along with Taco Charlton opposite of Clark, this signing, if it would happen, makes total sense.
Pro Bowler in 17, 18, and 19, but only played 7 games last year because of injury with no sacks. He's 31 years old. I do, like you, Herbie, I remember him as being a dominant pass rushing force. I'm wondering if he is still that, and is it rolling the dice to bring in someone like Melvin Ingram, Sam?
I mean, if that's a position that I think they really need to address, and I think Melvin Ingram would be a great addition as long as they still address that position. Maybe it allows them to, they're a team that likes to draft best player available, and therefore they try and check all their boxes, in March in free agency to allow them to draft best player available. But if they just go into the season or just go into the draft, let's say, with Melvin Ingram and the guys they have now, Herbie mentioned Taco Charlton's coming back. Let's say they let Alex Okafor and Tano Passanio walk. I still think they have to address that position in the draft. And that would be a good way to do it. You know, you'd have Frank Clark, a veteran guy. You'd have Melvin Ingram, a veteran guy. I think he's going to be 32, right? But
yeah,
the season starts. So that would be those would be two really good guys for a draft pick to learn from. But I'd like to see them get some speed on the edge, because Frank Clark is not a guy that is going to come just dart around the edge and sack the quarterback. Melvin Ingram is 32 years old. So I'd like to see them get some speed at that position. And maybe this move would allow them to sort of kick the can down the road to the draft to address that.
Okay. And how about let's stay on the defensive side and just break down linebacker and then the secondary cornerback. What is Damian Wilson going to be back with the Chiefs, do we think?
They bring Damian Wilson back. Just how free agency is shaking out there, you can't expect more than a 2-year deal. If you need him in the pinch, you bring him back on a 1-year deal. But here we are a week into free agency, and then I go back to my earlier point. I can't think of any Chiefs unrestricted free agent right now who's on the verge of signing elsewhere. If you want Damian Wilson back, you can get him back on a 1-year deal.
But I guess the question is, I mean, do they want him back? Is he a difference maker? I mean, he had the best play of the Super Bowl for the Chiefs with the the goal line stand tackle. But otherwise, I don't know. I think the Chiefs need to get better at that position.
Yeah, I think the Chiefs think they need to get better at that position. That was one of the spots that Brett Veach mentioned ahead of free agency. What was that, Herbie? Probably the first couple of days of March when we chatted with him.
March the 1st. Yep, March the 1st.
And now the linebacker market has been about the slowest to develop of any position. There's still some guys out there, but I think the only way Damian Wilson's back is if the Chiefs don't get what they want, Damian Wilson doesn't get what he wants, and suddenly that marriage becomes a lot more sensible. But that's a spot they need to get better.
Yeah, there's Missouri linebacker Nick Bolton. If you want to take a flyer on him, I don't think first-round pick, but maybe in the second if you want him.
And you got to talk to him earlier this week, didn't you, Herbie? What were the impressions of Nick Bolton from his pro day at Mizzou?
Well, we know he's highly coveted. He revealed during his post-workout Zoom call that he talked to 3/4 of the league. The team that really seemed to pay the most attention to him are the Pittsburgh Steelers. And if any team loves linebackers, you think of the Chicago Bears, you think of the Steelers, And he had a 40-minute Zoom call with Mike Tomlin and Kevin Colbert, head coach and their general manager there. So there's clearly some interest from the Steelers there. But he did mention that he has talked to the Chiefs during this pre-draft process.
And Herbie, you're such a veteran of going to the combine, and of course there is no combine. There was no combine this year. These pro days are pretty important for players for every prospect, but especially for players like Nick Bolton, right?
Yeah, they got to stand out, and that's the key thing, because they're not having the opportunity to showcase their skills, in front of a national audience. The way the combine is these days, televised workouts at night, crying out loud. People actually tune in to watch 40-yard dashes, but that's what they're missing there. And the opportunity to see how a player would measure up against others. Some of these highly graded players, because 300+ college prospects get invited annually to the combine. And Bolton even mentioned that. He was the only linebacker who worked out at his pro day, so he missed the opportunity to go through drills with people of his own position group. So that's one of the things they miss.
I will say, though, the Chiefs are a tape-driven team. So their scouting comes from the game film. And I think they use the combine, of course, for the medicals. They'll miss out on that. But also just to confirm what they feel like they've seen on tape. And if something from the pro day pops as so dissimilar from what they've seen on tape, they go back and watch the tape and see, what did we miss about this guy initially? But of course, you're going to miss out on some of the lower level kids. Of course, we still saw the Chiefs last year get a guy like Turk Wharton, despite there not being those pro days last year. But the Chiefs are still doing most of their scouting work based on the game film.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point, because I specifically asked Brett Veach that question on March the 1st. What are you missing in this pre-draft process? that you didn't have last year. And he said that. It's like what they try to do is you got the game tape. You know how fast the guy is, and if he's running, all of a sudden he's running extremely fast. And he didn't want to call out any schools, but he said, some of these tracks are a lot faster than what you would get at the combine. It was kind of funny the way he said that. I'm not going to mention any schools, but
I got to tell you, Turk Wharton that's a heck of a find. It's not just that he played Division II. He didn't play Division II at Northwest Missouri State or Pitt State or one of the programs that we're all familiar with that have sent players to the NFL. He was at Missouri Rolla. So to find him and then to identify him as the player that he became as a rookie, that really is a testament to the Chiefs scouting.
Yeah, I mean, not even a guy that had a great senior year, to be honest.
Right.
He was injured a lot of his senior year, but tried to play through it because he thought, he's got to have some game film. But then the game film isn't as good as what he wanted it to be because he was injured. So you're right. I mean, that's one the Chiefs deserve a lot of credit for.
The final thought on Nick Bolton, one of his best games this past season was a game in which the Missouri won. I think the final score was something like 50-47. It was that LSU game with Missouri winning the game on a goal line stand. He made 2 huge plays down on the goal line to end that game for Missouri. So, here's hoping for good news for Nick Bolton as he pursues his NFL career. Okay, guys, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, there's just a couple positions on the offense we need to talk about. Okay, we're back with Herbie Teope and Sam McDowell. They cover the Chiefs for the Kansas City Star, and guys, we can't not let an opportunity pass without talking about the offensive line. And the Chiefs certainly did address the line with the signing of Joe Thuney and Kyle Long, but there just seems to be a big hole out there, and that's at left tackle. They haven't filled that need. There are players on this roster that could step in and play in a pinch, but that's the solution isn't on the roster right now. So, Sam, where are the Chiefs going to go with left tackle? Is this something that you think we'll see resolved in free agency, or are we going to wait for the draft, or will there be a trade? What's your best guess on what's going to happen at that position?
Yeah, well, I know it's a spot they're still looking for a veteran guy. I mean, they would prefer not to go into the draft not knowing who their left tackle is going to be in 2021. So it's definitely a spot that they're still searching. But you look at a lot of the tackle ratings, and it's funny. I mean, I've seen one list of the guys out there still, and of course you got Villanueva out there for Pittsburgh as the top guy still remaining. But I saw one list with Eric Fisher as the number 2 left tackle.
He's out there.
So I don't know.
He's available.
I don't know if they know much about that guy, but perhaps they could bring him in for a visit. I do still wonder about Eric Fisher and both Mitchell Schwartz, that if they show some sort of progress and rehab and in their recovery, if something down the line might make sense around training camp. But I still think that this team wants to get left tackle solved before the draft.
Alejandro Villanueva for the Steelers. I do like him. I like his durability. He hasn't missed a start in 5 years, hasn't missed a snap in 3 years. I know he's 32, but I really like him as a possibility, more so than Russell Okung, who he's only played in 13 games each of the last 2 years, played with the Panthers this past year. I think it was only 6 or 7 games with Carolina. He's the other one that you see whose name pops up, best available. Both Villanueva and Okung are 32 years old, but Villanueva just has the ability to stay on the field. And that's, what's the best abilities availability line that absolutely applies to Alejandro Villanueva. So
he's got the mental makeup too. We're talking about a former U.S. Army Ranger. We're talking about a viable combat veteran who served a couple of tours in Afghanistan and Iraq. And you want a guy with high character. Everybody loved him in Pittsburgh. And that's why, to me, it's kind of mind-boggling that I'm not hearing anything that, Villanueva's name is somehow linked to the Chiefs. But I think, for a team that loves guys with high character, Dylan waving the P just makes perfect sense.
Not just the Chiefs. I mean, I definitely agree with that, but I'm more. It surprises me that Pittsburgh is letting him walk. Appears to be letting him walk because he's a key guy for what they want. We haven't heard a lot of interest across the league.
Yeah,
and it's puzzling to me. It's almost like what are we missing there?
Crazy. I think a lot of that has to probably do with money. I mean, look at what Trent Williams commanded. When you're talking about a guy who, you mentioned his durability. He's a guy that's going to be on the field. I'm curious to know what he's asking for. That might be also holding him up, signing somewhere.
Okay, and earlier we mentioned Sammy Watkins on his visitation tour this week to Baltimore, then Indianapolis. Wide receiver is an interesting position for the Chiefs. They get so much production from Tyreek Hill, from tight end / wide receiver Travis Kelce, McCole Hardman. They're not giving up on McCole Hardman, even though I don't think he made the progress from year 1 to year 2 that you might expect. They certainly have identified Byron Pringle as somebody they think will move up on the depth charts. I don't know what's going to happen with Demarcus Robinson. I think that's a little bit of a mystery right now, is where he fits in the grand scheme of things. But the thinking is they're in the market for a wide receiver. Who is out there available at that position, Sam?
Yeah, there's not a lot of guys left. That was a market that took a couple days to develop, but then once it did, a lot of guys, it was bang, 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 bang. They were never going to be in the market for like a Kenny Galladay type contract and pay somebody $18 million a year. But there were a couple of the smaller 1-year deals that I thought might make sense for them. I even like the Kendrick Bourne deal that the Patriots got, $5 million a year. I thought that could have been a good fit. We know JuJu Smith-Schuster specifically said the Chiefs offered him a deal that was probably richer than the one he accepted from Pittsburgh, but he liked his situation and Pittsburgh wanted to stay there all along. But the list is, I talked about seeing Eric Fisher on the list. I've seen Sammy Watkins at the top of available lists now with free agent wide receivers. And part of that is because of Sammy Watkins' age. But now I think that the Chiefs should be in the market of hunting one of these 1 or 2 year deals max for a wide receiver to solve that position. I do think it's something they need to address. Going in with Byron Pringle, McCole Hardman is the only 2 guys right now behind Tyreek Hill. I don't know what the interest is going to be in Demarcus Robinson. I think that's a guy they'd like to move on from, but maybe the market comes back and there's not much interest in him. Even so, I still think that'd be a position they had to address in some fashion.
That was the case last year with Demarcus Robinson. Remember, brought him back. So when I think of what the Chiefs need at that position is, I don't think about a specific player as much as I do a body type. I think they want a little bit of size at this particular wide receiver position. Something that with Tyreek Hill and McCole Hardman, you've got similar size guys, smallish. I think you'd like to have a guy that can go up and get a ball. That's something when you think about it, that in Mahomes' 3 years as a starter, they haven't had. They just haven't had that guy that can go up and get a ball.
Yeah, especially when you think about the Super Bowl, Blair. There would have been some
right.
times that would probably have been nice that he just had somebody he could throw a jump ball to. And even Travis Kelce with his size is not that type of tight end. He's a guy who's extremely elusive, who gets open.
And usually good hands. But not.
Yeah.
He doesn't
not a jump ball type. And really, Andy Reid in his career. When you go back to pre Patrick Mahomes, they haven't had. They tried that with Kelvin Benjamin. They tried a stint with him.
Oh gosh, yeah, that's right.
But other than that, I can't think of one of those jump ball type receivers that Andy Reid's tried to bring in here.
Jody Fortson, baby. This could be the year.
There you go. Well, that's a good one to end it on, Herbie. The Jody Fortson watch has started. Okay, guys. I would ask you. Typically, I would ask you what to look out for, but there really isn't. All you can do is be vigilant, right? And nose to the grindstone sort of approach to all of this. Herbie, I did want to bring up the mock drafts are on the horizon. When is the first one going to drop?
Speculation season, baby. We'll start rolling them out the first Friday of April, and it'll be every Friday leading to the draft.
Very good. What's your? Do you have an early lean on number 31? Where the Chiefs are going?
I'm waffling back and forth. You know, it's here's the thing about mock drafts. There's no exact science to it, as we all know. So what I tend to do with my mock drafts is what position makes sense and why it would make sense. So it's really going to depend on where I lean. Usually I make up my mind a couple of days before I start writing it, but it's probably going to be a tackle. It has to be a tackle, because if they don't sign someone between now and Friday, it's got to be a tackle.
Yeah, and listen, I don't want this no exact science thing. I want accuracy. So you better give me some.
If you were to poll every mock draft and find out who, like, and I'm using air quotes, the experts, if you polled them, it's like I think their hit rate is less than 5%. So, hey,
yeah.
We use mock drafts as an educational process to get to know the players. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. Okay, guys, great chat. And I'm guessing we will do it again next week, because it's that type of information that people want to hear and love hearing it from you guys, Herbie, Teope, and Sam McDowell. Thanks, guys. That'll do it for today. Thanks to our SportsBeat KC production staff of Derek Donovan, Beth Welsh, Monty Davis, Jeff Rosen, Chris Fickett, and Savannah Smith. A tip of the cap to Herbie, Teope, and Sam McDowell for talking Chiefs. Links to their stories can be found in the show notes and on kansascity.com. Hey, we have another deal for you. You can subscribe to Sports Pass for 99 cents a month. That's right, 99 pennies a month. After 3 months, it auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless you cancel. And of course, Sports Pass is the Kansas City Star's online sports section, which includes all the stories that appear in print and much, much more. What a time to subscribe. The Royals are at spring training with opening day right around the corner. March Madness is here, and even though Kansas and Missouri are no longer in it, there's still a couple of weeks of great NCAA tournament play to watch and to cover. And of course, as we find out today and every week, it's never not Chiefs season. So how do you get it? You go to kansascity.com/sportspass2020. That is kansascity.com/sportspass2020. Do you want more than just sports coverage? Check out the entire Kansas City Star product. Sports news, features, commentary, and analysis, the whole thing. You get all the stories written by my talented colleagues, plus additional national news, sports, and business coverage with the e-edition. The details for all of these deals can be found at account.kansascity.com/subscribe. And if you're having trouble hunting down any of these offers, send me an email, bkerkhoff@kcstar.com, and I will get you to the right place. So whether it's the Sports Pass or the full subscription, you're getting and supporting the best sports and news coverage in Kansas City and helping us produce programs like SportsBeat KC. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back on Thursday with another episode.